Hey everyone, welcome back to the Evolve podcast, where we focus on what is actually changing across marketing, customer experience, AI, and enterprise technology. My name is Steve Ash. I am the SVP of Decisioning at Blend. For episode 13, we're diving into one of the biggest shifts happening in the industry right now, how agentic AI, decisioning, and intelligent orchestration are reshaping the future of marketing and customer engagement. To help unpack that, I'm joined by Greg DeMelo, Chief Technology Officer, one-to-one customer engagement at Pega, who has been at the forefront of decisioning AI and enterprise transformation strategy, alongside Ryan Serpan, Head of CX Practice at Blend. Greg, Ryan, great to have you both here. And Greg, you're joining us from Australia, right?
Right now, I'm in Australia. Yeah, we have some good customers out here. I came out to do an APAC tour over the last several weeks, so I'm winding down and then soon to be home in where I live in Rhode Island.
We're across time zones and across the clock. And Ryan's joining us from Denver.
That's right. Mountain time. Spring is in the air here. It's I'm not sure what it's like in the winter in Australia there, but we're in the summer here now, so should be fun.
Very cool. And I'm joining everyone from Connecticut. All right, guys, let's jump in. So let's talk about what's actually changing. Greg, I'm going to point the first question to you. From your perspective, what is truly changing in the market right now with SaaSmageddon?
Well, I think what's changing is as people address the demands of customers, they are really focused on personalization and have a path to actually execute it now, given the technology that's available. People are confronted with: do I build all of this myself? Do I build bits and pieces of this? Is the build strategic? I think that's a question that people are confronted with. What's really happening is the people who are focused on their customers are actually building essential things. They're looking at their data and insights. They're understanding what it means for those customers and how to engage with them. But really, they're engaging with partners and vendors that are driving the essential bits that actually help you get to personalization. So really, the kind of the unit of work that they're building is changing. They're no longer building large campaigns and segmentations and journeys. They're focusing on understanding who the customer is and having a technology there that can actually activate personalization at scale in the moment. Every time a customer hits a new page, a new channel, a new moment with them, they're actually redecisioning in that live moment. The profitability of that now is doable. Campaign management used to have a different type of economic model. I had to reach millions of customers with that same unit of work. Now I can actually afford to hit smaller and smaller populations of customers while being very specific to that population or even to the individual. I think the economies of scale really have changed that, and it's now time for people to actually treat their customers as individuals.
And a quick follow-up there. Do you think this is a fundamental reset and a pivot, a hard pivot, or more of a natural evolution?
I think where we are have always been in this space. I think it's now more. There have been some pioneers that people have followed, so it's a little bit of catch up. It's a little bit of now I think the technology is more readily available to get to personalization. There's still a shift and there's still a decision that people are making. Do I run campaign management just because agentic and AI can make it faster now, or do I actually need the fundamental architectural change to make decisions in real time at the moment? And I think where we stand on that one. The shift is coming from the people who's starting to realize that you're not going to get a faster horse. You actually need a new invention here. You need new architecture here, right? It's not just about making the horse run faster in this instance. It's about making sure you have the right architecture to be able to execute the way your business strategy demands and your customers are demanding. And I think that's really the momentum that we're seeing. There's more adoption and understanding that, hey, this isn't just making campaigns run faster.
I think when you build on that there, Greg, yeah, it's this whole AI agentic, kind of framework is great. You really can operate these things in a way you never could before. To personalize, to your point, right? Segment of me, segment of one. Well, then I have to have enough creative, and I have to have enough content, and I have to have enough, material. It matters not that I can decision in the moment and speak to the individual if I have one thing to say to them, right, and one thing to say to everyone. And so we've unlocked it. I think we're at that pivotal moment where we've cleared the hype curve with AI, and we can see how to actually do it. But I think what I'm finding now is if the organization never really had those principles at their core in the first place, the operational mindset's really hard to adapt to, right? This idea that I truly can have nearly an unlimited number of things to say and nearly unlimited number of ways to say it at my disposal. And those paradigms are really, really hard to kind of mentally break through, right? Like, how am I going to deal with legal in that situation? How am I going to deal with producing that much content? How am I going to be assured that all of that content properly got into the right systems to kind of federate and operate? And so I think what we see is complete believability that we've unlocked a new paradigm with AI and agentic. But now kind of the next, hurdle we have to jump is applying it in the right way. And if you had a very immature organization yesterday that's never really built personalization in a one-to-one fashion, to your point, Greg, the architecture is going to get you, the ability to do it. And I think from our side, we see, but you've also got to completely change the operating model now, how you think about planning personalization at that kind of scale, with that kind of variant mass, that kind of sizing is a whole new ballgame. But it shouldn't be daunting or scary. We can do this, really truly, with these AI tools that we have at our disposal now. So to me, that's the exciting time that we're in. And I really think the second half of 2026 is going to be kind of the era of the CMO coming back to the top of the food chain to some degree, because now you've got kind of the strategy led mindset, and we can back that strategy with the supporting framework to make it happen. And it's kind of a cool time to see that happening.
I agree. The execution of it though is where we really need to spend our time, not just making what's there faster, but we need to be the thought leaders in presenting the better way to do it, right? We don't want people just rebuild what they're doing or just, put more content out there. More content means, you have the ability to have something that's available for everybody else. If you're still making decisions in the old way that you were making decisions 20 years ago, it's content you're presenting today that was decided yesterday, right? Or even worse in some cases, decided, maybe several days ago, right? The ability to personalize and decision isn't just I can make a decision, right? I've always said this, I can make a decision using JavaScript. It doesn't mean that it's elegant, doesn't mean that it has all the right context, the right data, doesn't mean that it actually knows who that individual is. I'm just making a decision maybe between A or B. The reality of it is you're making decisions across, thousands of data points, thousands of potential actions that you could bring or content you could bring to an individual. It has to be intelligent, right? And how you get that intelligent decision in the moment, it has to be prepared for and planned for through good operations. It has to be prepared for with good intelligence and how that intelligence is curated and what that specific intelligence is and how you can bring those to the decision moment. I think that is daunting architecture that needs not just a better factory to produce this stuff, but the intelligence and the engineering behind understanding what to do. And I think that's where the idea of agentic, I can build anything I want with that, right? That's certainly on the horizon, if not here, right? I do that today. Now, can I build enterprise ready, bot-led quality infrastructure that is controlled, compliant, and meets the demands of the customer? I think the expectation there is that these AI tools will be able to build everything, and I think it's really a matter of, do you have the intelligence to tell it what to do so that you get what you need out of it? And I think that's where we in the enterprise software space have to recognize that shift is happening and where to actually apply that shift to make sure the tenets of what your customers need and your executive boardroom is asking for, you have to make sure the execution is led by, the right mindset to get you to the goal and the outcome. And I think the build side of things, you could be building that program for years, right? And you could be wrapped around the axle of building software versus actually talking to your customers in the moment when they need your help or they need a product or service, and you're missing that moment, you're missing that window. I think the time to act is now. The initial motion and inertia is there to act. It's a matter of, are you acting in the right way to get to market the fastest way, where you can meet your customers' expectations. And I think that's where we have to help them as stewards of this capability, stewards of this motion towards personalization. I think the wave is there. It's just a matter of, are people making the right decisions, or are they crashing down somewhere else on the rocks where they're just stuck building something for the next 5 to 10 years, which I think is very viable for people to do, unfortunately.
Is the focus on more on replacing platforms or extracting value from what's already there and adding to?
I think at least in the near term, there's still a lot of specialization from the platforms themselves, right? Email platforms have really specialized in certain things that they do and do well, IP management and targeting and optimization at the send level, and right. And to some degree, I like to think of it as a great workshop, right? You've got all the right tools in the drawer, but you've really needed is the ability to orchestrate all of those things together to work properly, right? And when we think of platform systems, like a Pega, for example, this is an adaptive modeling environment that is very, very hardened to manage, large scale decisioning ecosystem. Now, connecting the dots between a decisioning brain like that and an outbound email tool, and connecting the brain between that and the RCS channel where I'm chatting with a customer, directly, that kind of synergy has been one of the most difficult things for us to tackle in the MarTech ecosystem, right? Because it previously was just a big pipeline of data management, challenges. I think today, the speed of an LLM, the speed of an agent's ability to process, but also our ability to create very well governed, access to those systems kind of takes the human out of the journey, if that makes sense, right? I no longer have to curate touch point A to touch point B to touch point C anymore. I just have to know what my strategy is and let the agents kind of manage the orchestration. So I think today it really should look like maximize the investments that you've made and leverage the tools that you have at your disposal. I think we'd be hard pressed, Greg, and tell me if you agree, to find a single CMO out there that feels like they're hitting the entire capacity of all the things they'd like to be doing, right? I'm sure that they'd like to be doing 100, more things a month than they are in terms of targeting and specialization and localization and personally, but they're just literally limited by the human capacity of, application, right? And now, if we can look past that and say, hey, maybe the thing that we should be building is sort of like the neural network of the agents that are going to support this thing and connecting those dots. But let's not think about this as just a pure SaaSmageddon moment, unplug everything and now try to rebuild it all from the ground up. And maybe in 2-3 years time, we'll be changing that tune, right? Like maybe in a couple years, we'll be looking back saying there are some better ways to do this. But I think today's energy needs to be around getting to the capacity that you've always sought to have as a CMO, because you can now. But then also understanding that the linear journey or even the bifurcated journey or the manually curated journey is now officially no longer necessary in your parlance, right? As a team, you really can be thinking about the exact moment in time, delivering the exact right context to allow that experience that your customer is getting to be as near to the best possible experience that they could be getting. And I think, to Greg's point, that's what we should be spending our energy on as marketers, is thinking about what we want and need that to be for our business, and then orchestrating the system to work best to deliver that outcome, right?
I do agree, Ryan. To some extent, as an engineer, like heritage, I feel like the integrations are solved, right? It's a solved problem. I can connect literally any technology to any other technology. We have infinite ways to do that, right? Now you have Agentic that is the ability to build on top of some of those interfaces a conversational tool that has skills and you can talk to through other agents, or you can talk to through an application interface, or you can talk through programmatically. And those skills are useful to your the challenge that you laid out, right? The friction that exists in getting all of the things to market in sort of that supply chain, right? How can I not meet the needs of the CMO when I have all this technology, right? That's the sort of pressure between the CMO and the CIO, or who owns some of the MarTech stack. Connecting boxes and arrows in a PowerPoint. Yeah, we've been doing that for years. Taking that PowerPoint and turning it into software that's connected and talking to each other. I think we've also been doing that for years. It's the purpose behind those architectures that I think is really where the intelligence that our thought leaders here need to help these organizations. Because just listening to, and frankly, I'm also in the software vendor camp, just listening to a software vendor's idea around how they should use their software. There's so much overlap, there's so much confusion. To the CMO, they think they have everything they need, yet they feel like their jobs are still, constrained by, that invisible force of is it operations, is it the process, is it all the controls that I have, is it creative slowing things down, is it the engine itself? I think we need to teach people the understanding of how their organizations actually process this work, where the efficiencies can be gained, specifically how they invest in technology that does help them with controls and risk, and make sure that they're not just going fast, but they're going fast with a purpose. They're going fast under a controlled and regulated industry, right? That is very important to make sure that the intelligence is built into the upstream setup, not just down at the decision making. And think more and more, when you look at the decision itself, the intelligence behind it and what that decision tells you, not just about what you presented to that customer, but what you chose deliberately not to send to that customer. That's where you start to see some of the unlock here, right? The data that is available now at decision time with this win-loss analysis, right? The ability to actually explain, not just to an auditor what was given to somebody because they had a certain credit score, or they had a certain data point, but the explainability into how your business strategy is actually executing versus, just upstream planning it. I planned this execution, so my team probably implemented that, right? I think the visibility into what's actually happening and the opportunity to use that strategically to set up what is the next best action in their strategy, right? I think this is where the moment is really critical. The initial setup just sets the table. It's how your customers are reacting and responding to what you have. That's where you have an opportunity to learn how I should re-engage with them and do different things. Right? This is where you can actually take strategy to market in a much faster way. Whereas it used to take 9 months or so to get that data prepared, get that data into a BI tool, have somebody build a BI report if one wasn't already there, have that taken into, a strategy team or creative team and think about new ways to target 1 million or 5 million customers. The cost of that going to agency, building all the creative out, getting it approved through legal. Daunting effort. We're not doing that process anymore. We've stripped out the essential things that are needed and re-engineered them to meet an agentic marketing vision. And I think that's where you're still connecting the technology. You're still using the tools that are in your MarTech stack. You're just using them in an intelligent way that removes the friction to get to market. And I think that purpose of architecture is really the critical piece.
So let's talk about, using these platforms, right? And using the newer capability that's coming at us. How does the user experience today, somebody using these SaaS platforms today, how do they need to evolve with all of the agentic tools and processes coming at them today? How do they need to incorporate that into their daily lives to really ensure customers are getting what they need?
I've got kind of a unique answer to this question, which is I worry that we lean too quickly into the AI shall solve everything. AI, agent. We've even had clients come to us and say, we just saw a proposal that we should just give everybody Claude code, give everybody Replit, give everyone the ability to build an agent to support what they need, and that's gonna speed things up. So I think there's kind of there's a bit of a both, right? You've got to have the skill set. So it is good to give folks the ability to leverage AI, get comfortable with the tools, understand how those tools are going to affect your day to day. But then there's kind of this graduation, like we always think of maturity curves in these worlds, right? Like to me, there's that level one maturity is sort of everyone's learning how to use AI. We've all gotten good at using ChatGPT. I've got Copilot over there. I can have it assist me make a presentation tomorrow. Then there's kind of this like level two maturity, which we start to get into. We're better at building more what I would consider enterprise agents that, I think Greg do a lot of the things that you've mentioned too, understand security and governability and evaluation and performance. But we still treat it, I think, a lot like a product engineering lifecycle. So I have a need, I kick some requirements over, somebody builds something. I think the next evolution, it's upon us organizationally to say, we need to create the proper agentic framework for how to do these things. And I think, Greg, you've touched on a couple of points that I think resonate really well with where I believe the model should be going, which is if Ryan builds an agent to support something that I'm doing, and the creative agency that I work with has agents that are doing what they're doing, and my Martech tool has got an agent that's doing what it's doing, that governance and orchestration of the ecosystem is really where the power is going to lie in unlocking the bigger value, right? So is this just Greg needs to learn how to vibe code and Replit, and therefore he can do all of his own prototyping now? Yeah, that's a good step one to kind of learn how these tools can work. But I think the real step forward is when we begin to think about incorporating the agentic design into the operating model of the ecosystem, right? It should be self-optimizing. It should be sharing knowledge, across an ecosystem. It should be in a framework where I can evaluate the performance of the agent, not just how it's performing from a token usage and speed and quality, but is it affecting the business at all? Right? Are these agents actually having a positive impact on the business or the customer experience? So to think about that as like maybe one of the key investment platforms is as much in the strategic design of your approach to agentic as it is building a bunch of agents that do work for you. And I believe that's kind of the critical point that CMOs have got to be thinking about here is it's not as easy as just wireframing something up in Replit and saying, see, this is how marketing ops shall work now. It's also really understanding that you've got a strategic exercise at your feet now, at your doorstep, that you've really got to go back and think through. I'm going to change it, but I'm going to change it very purposefully, and I'm going to design it to follow that purpose very well. And then when those things come together, I think, once again, echoing Greg's points, your architecture now becomes this 1 + 1 = 100, kind of amplification of what you've already invested in your stack. We have to think about this with a new strategic lens on our eyes, right? Like this, to my eyes, the executives that are driving these kinds of programs sort of like own the responsibility of saying, yes, I want the people around me to be enabled with AI. I want them to be thinking first about how they can make their lives better with AI. But then it's now incumbent upon us to put a strategy and a design and a very purposeful, kind of architecture around that, right? So it's not just agents for the sake of it, but it's agents for the sake of achieving a business objective. And if that business objective isn't measured and evaluated and the agents performing it aren't, evaluated therefore on that overall objective, then you've just created AI slop and more tech waste, So I think that's the precipice of our journey right now. We've got to start really rethinking that org process.
So are the C-suite executives, are they asking the right questions around AI in the conversation you guys are in? And if they're not, what questions should they be asking of each other, of their teams, and of their partners?
I think some are and some aren't, right? And I think the reality is if you're a good leader, you're going to let your teams elevate their skill, right? It's important that you keep, high quality people in a supporting role there. But the leadership isn't here's the technology I need you to absolutely use. I
Right.
think that's a mistake,
It's not
right?
top down.
I think it's listen to your people, make good decisions around. They're the ones that understand how the everything is put together, assembled. I think making decisions without their insight is a mistake. I think making sure that you understand just exactly where the friction is, I think is important. But use every tool at your disposal. Right now, AI is, super hot buzzword. Yes, we're all over it in the industry. It's helped us for years accelerate the things that we do. It's helped us bring quality to our work. I look at it like data as well, right? Some people are like, should I build a dashboard or should I just have somebody talk to data? I always worry that with a dashboard, two people looking at it from two different parts of the world will see the entirely different conclusions from each other. The same thing's going to happen with conversational AI. If you don't have control over what that AI is going to do for you, is it really fit for purpose to achieve the strategic needs that your business has in front of it? And I think having a control plane around it versus just talking to Claude or just talking to ChatGPT, you are the person who, as talking to those interfaces, controls the quality of the output. They just keep throwing responses back at you from your chat, and you have to actually read it, right? Like novel concept. You have to understand what it's saying to you. And is it making stuff up, right? Like it almost certainly it has some bit of it that is made up that is not based on real facts, right? The people who are engineering better prompts and posting on YouTube and Instagram how to fix this, like great. Is everybody in your organization going to be doing that, or are you going to build processes with AI that's built into it that is repeatable, reusable, and actually brings value versus, Ryan, you said slop, right? Imagine we've just made the problem worse, right? If giving people all these tools, we now have, instead of organizational silos, we have silos of individuals creating AI content that doesn't all align and doesn't all fit the purpose of the strategic objectives that these organizations have. There has to be something that controls this, that has an understanding of what the good outcome is, and it has to be consistent to the business objectives. It can't be independent by individuals. Certainly, you want to hire people with their own thought process, their own skill that they bring to the table, but you still have to have something that's fit for purpose. And I think that's where a control plane or a process behind this that completely is invisible to the end user. I'm still working towards a goal. I'm still working towards an outcome. I think that is still very important as we bring AI into the workforce in a useful way, I would say.
So, guys, let's pivot here then. Let's pivot off of that conversation. Let's talk about specific industries or specific types of companies, size of companies. Where are we starting to see early signs of traction? And what are those early indicators that you guys are seeing in your conversations with prospects and clients?
Having, just come off this trip, right? I've been through all of APAC talking to customers and prospects. The banks here understand, for years, they understand that personalization yields loyalty. Loyalty yields net promoter score. Net promoter score yields, recommend to friend or family members, right? More interactions, more affinity towards those brands that yields, when the opportunity arises that somebody needs a financial product, they think of that brand first and they acquire the product through them, right? That has been something we have been doing for years, right? And then as you think about um, their scope of work across an entire customer life cycle, all the way from acquisition to growth to retention to win back, right? There's a lot of things you should be saying to a customer. What they've historically focused on is the acquisition side and then the retention side. They've never had any reason to focus on nurturing. Certainly they've been selling, but that's still acquisition, right? They're pushing product to people. The shift that we talked about earlier around the strategy is certainly there, right? I want to actually engage with people. Now, if I continue to do more of what I did in the past, more mortgage offers and more credit card offers are not going to build loyalty. So now, as you think of you know, this shift, right? The strategy to nurture now is emerging at these financial institutions, and it's really driving their growth strategy, right? Can I actually build loyalty to a financial institution, and will that customer reward me? The anchor back to a desired channel. Right? I want people in my mobile app. I want to build rich experiences there that they can fulfill all their needs as a customer. They can be serviced there. They can acquire new products as needed. They can understand their insights around how they spend money, how they accrue debt, where money is going out the door. So this nurturing side of things in retail banking and financial institutions is so critical, yet they don't all understand when to stop selling. And I think this is where what we do in decisioning and at the moment really matters. But the critical piece is, do you have the ability to get to that approach, right? That ability to meet customers in a desired channel, and can you turn off or re-strategize how you're disrupting their lives by continuously sending them emails, right? It needs to be cohesive. We can't have channels having their own strategy. We actually need to have strategies that lead people to the good outcomes. And I think financial services institutions are absolutely picking up on that motion and are leading the pack here. And you'll start to see others look at that and say, hey, this isn't because they have better products. It's because they built a strategy around loyalty. And any industry that cares about their customer and builds loyal customers will be rewarded. And this is where these personalization decision engines, these capabilities that we all know and love, it's leading to loyalty. It's not leading to better offer management, better targeting of offers, right? That's the fallacy in this. So I firmly believe financial services institutions have gotten that piece right. You still see a little bit of that thumb on the scale pushing more offers out, but more and more you'll start to see people lean into not selling and living in the nurture space until the customer actually sends a real signal that they need something.
Pick up on that point, and I'll take it from two other industries lens, right? Involved a lot heavily in telco right now. And I think a very consistent message we're seeing coming out of telco is it's time to reclaim the relationship, right? We've lost really true product differentiation in telecommunications. Like nobody's got a better network than anyone else anymore. They all sell the same device, right? Everyone's got the same Apple phone, the same new Samsung Fold. So where can you differentiate now? And the relationship is one of the few places that you can differentiate, right? Being available to your customer at any moment in time with what exactly they need is the next differentiator in that industry. We see the same thing in retail, right? We work with some retail brands, especially owned retail brands that are saying, and I loved you kind of use that analogy there, Greg, which is almost like the offer fatigue. The only relationship I've ever had with the customer is sending him a discount this weekend at 5 o'clock. And I send them that same email 3 times a day, 7 days a week, just trying to be present enough so that when they take an offer, they take mine. Well, you could change that paradigm. One of the conversations we were having with the children's clothing brand was this idea of, well, what if the brand was actually kind of like your friend in your pocket that you could ideate with on the best, clothes for your kids. Hey, they're really in the moment and seasonal and react, versus 30% off today, click here to buy. And that's a very different relationship, right? So what if the brand could be your friend, not your brand could be your offer manager, right? Sort of that balance. And we are hearing this a lot from clients right now, which is that belief that the customer relationship is what we need to claim back or what we need to really become masters of. And it is not just at the only KPI of conversion, right? If the only KPI of conversion is the only one you target, you're going to fall into the offer only trap, and you're going to lose the rest of that relationship, right? But we had to do that if you really think about it, because if I've got 10 hours in the day and it takes me all 10 hours to get a campaign out the door, I have to go for the KPI that is about offer or, conversion or click. When I now can do more than that, and I have systems that can deliver more experiences for me in mass, I can think of more ways to have good experiences with the customer and create that relationship. So that, I mean, I really think this is one of the most exciting times, and our clients and customers see that, and it's become key to all of their strategies. I don't think I've read a 10K in the last 3 months that didn't say we need to change the relationship with the customer. I mean, it's top strategic initiative of every single board, for every single client we're talking to. So we know it's hot. We know they're focused on it, and now it's kind of, I think, Greg, you've used the saying before too, but you got to get moving. You got to make it something you're really aggressive about, and kind of go in and learn if you as you go if you have to. But stationary motion right now is going to set you back further than motion, right?
Well, if you move in the wrong direction too, though, it's going to be even worse, right? And then you get into sort of that sunk cost, right? You're setting yourself up for a sunk cost argument here, right? You're not differentiating by building your own here. You're differentiating as an engineering firm, maybe, but you're trying to keep up with, the tech companies out there who, we have the luxury of learning from all of our customers and immediately rolling that into product, right? We build product that is for purpose, what the market is demanding. We build it quick, we get it to market, get it into the hands of our best customers. We continue to iterate on that. Our partners like yourselves implement and strategize on how best to use that, not just our software, but all the stuff around it. I think that's where as this shift happens, making the right decisions, but making them with informed opinion, I think is the most important. You can't acting. I think is you do have to get moving, right? I think that's absolutely right, Ryan. I love the examples you give, right? So telcos for years, right? We've heard the opposite. Retention isn't a problem. They'll come back to me, right? Like it's such a terrible attitude to have about your customer base, right? You've spent this time acquiring them, and they spend, monthly fees with you, their personal phone and their internet at home and their cable that they get. It's part of everyone's everyday lives, right? The thought that those organizations really don't care about you, and then you're a KPI around a conversion rate. That's the old world, right? If that is the opinion you want your brand to face in the public domain, I think you'll lose, right? Organizations that don't actually do good things and just try to say they do good things through commercials at the Super Bowl aren't actually winning, right? Like those are the brands that we as consumers move away from. It's obvious when your when your product organization that you work with every day cares about you or doesn't care about you. And as consumers, we're quick to reward. We're absolutely quick to write a negative review or negative feedback, right? There's not a lot of positive feedback that happens on the internet these days. It's all about a complaint or can you believe this happened? If you don't care about your customer in the way that you think you are by showing it through execution, you won't actually build that loyalty. You'll disenfranchise people from you, and you may never win them back. And I think that's the reality that not just telcos and retail face and banking, but I think every brand in the world needs to actually lean into who their customers are, what they're interested in, be reactive and responsive to their needs, because that's the expectation we have now everywhere with every brand we work with.
So, guys, we've talked about a lot here, and in the last few minutes, I've heard KPIs come up a bit. So, at the end of the day, taking into account everything we've just discussed, this has to translate into business impact or business outcomes, right? So, two-part question. First to you, Greg. What outcomes should C-level executives be prioritizing for their organization? And then Ryan, over to you. How do we measure that, right, in this evolution that we're going through?
Well, great question, right? I think first is deprioritizing the legacy KPIs that we've held us back, right? And frankly, impression rate and reach and things like that. The ability to understand that certainly people are eligible for a particular message, but the reach to that population, I think, is unrealistic, right? People may genuinely want your products, and people may genuinely not want your products. And if you don't understand that, and you don't understand that the efficiencies gained by not in targeting to a large population of 1 million people and expecting a 1 or 2% engagement rate and think that's good. I've heard people tell me that they think conversion rate is a fixed number in the universe. No matter how much I do, conversion rate is never going to change. So if I put more volume out there, my math is gonna math, and I'm gonna get this many products. So we know that certain people have a higher likelihood to engage and convert, and we know people have a lower likelihood. So our job in a decision engine technology that's going to personalize to the individual is to know who's going to engage and who's not. And then those who are not, you have to stop telling them that they need your product that you care about selling more than anything else in the world. So if you think about that strategy, what is actually important? The loyalty side of it. Again, we've hit on this, right? So what's the KPI that most people care about? Usually it's net promoter score, right? Net promoter score is a good long-term indicator of customer loyalty, right? How likely are they to recommend your product or service to a friend or family member? That is the ultimate goal of a lot of these organizations. Certainly, where I am right now in Australia, net promoter score across all the major retailers and banks here is how they measure themselves and take pride in their success. The gap between a moment in making a decision when Greg DeMelo is on a retail bank mobile app and net promoter score as a whole, I think is a vast difference, right? So first and foremost, I'd have to look at the full channel engagement, right? I don't care if email engagement rate is dropping, but if my mobile channel engagement rate is going up, 5x, 10x, 20x, and I'm getting more loyal people in my mobile app, even by sending them emails that they never read or never click on, which is another problem we can talk about in another podcast. But the loyalty towards the places where you want them to appear, your front door, your mobile app, I think tracking engagement there, not thinking about conversion rate of an offer that's presented in a banner, right? Nobody's going to convert 15 or 20 times in a session. They're certainly not going to convert 15 to 20 times in a year, right? You're going to get conversions when customers need products. Your job is to make sure that they trust you when they need something, right? In retail, it's a little different, right? There's a moment of awareness, and you could build up that awareness into a decision moment, and they can acquire, right? I think that's a slightly different. But these long running relationships that you have with telcos and with banks, you need to preserve that. You need to have a KPI that represents are they actually engaging with you? Are they increasing their likelihood to engage with you over time? Right, that trend analysis I think is important, and the ability to understand the nuance between somebody who is, um, sort of a low engagement visitor and trying to earn more trust and trying to get them back and visit more. To me, those are the key things because that gives you more opportunity to sell when you need to, but it's also not based on the actual needs of the customer. Right, it's based on um, making sure they're loyal to you and they return back frequently, and then when they need that product, you're there for them. To me, that's where I'd center all my strategy around is having that channel of choice, or getting to the bank of choice or the telco of choice. Right, that is the goal of people. How they measure that, I think, will be a little different by industry, but it centers around that.
Yeah, I think the question of how do we measure it is what I would say is probably maybe the second biggest problem we're trying to help clients solve. Because what we see now and what we can see faster are what we would call, or I think what we refer to a lot as business trade offs, right? I'll use a telco example. If I have an Apple campaign, certainly I want to drive a campaign that's going to maximize clicks on the campaign and ultimately conversions on that campaign. So maybe I'm selling Apple watches, but inadvertently I may directly impact the Samsung campaign or the Google campaign that has the same device and the same need and the same product, right? But when I'm incentivized as a product owner or a business owner to drive my KPI is sell Apple iWatches. Well, then we're in trouble if it's causing a business trade off somewhere else and I can't see that trade off is happening. So the incentivization element of this is something that is going to be a major paradigm shift, I think, in order for us to measure holistically business impact and customer impact and not product or business unit level impact. And Greg, you've used banking a lot, right? And certainly, maybe I can push a really, really great program for a really great new credit card, through my system. But maybe my targeting was so wide and so broad that I actually converted a lot of customers into a product that is not going to be good for them down the road, right? And to know that that is the truth is really, really hard to measure sometimes, because we can have that conversation at a chief financial officer level, right? I can look at a P&L and L and just see the total bottom line, and then I can sort of see the layers that build to the bottom line. But as a business driver, say down in the product zone or in a very specific customer channel, I'm the email channel driver. I want my email channel to perform, right? So recentering our mindset around the customer experience and creating KPIs that are truly around the customer and not the channel and not the product and not the thing, but did the customer do the thing? That shift, I think, is maybe the most difficult one to make, because your entire organization is not built around that paradigm, right? It's built around channel, product, business unit, right? And it's really hard to flip that and say, we're just going to be about the customer now, and we're going to measure everything on the customer. And that maybe LTV is that ultimate driver. Is the customer's value going up over time? And you have to have sincere patience to see if that's true. So it's very difficult to do in this environment. We promise shareholders returns, and they want to see them. And to shift that paradigm in a short amount of time, even with agentic, is not going to be easy. And so, I think that's kind of what we're looking at in the space right now. How do we change that measurement? So Steve, you asked me how, and truly, I think a lot of these things we've been talking about on the podcast today have to come together. You've got to have a foundational data strategy that aligns all of those kinds of data. So I can't have analytics living over here and media performance data living over there. And my agency sends me a dashboard once a month, with their report on the number. And then my data science team is over here talking to me about the customer and it's not attached. I mean, we've got to get our data right. And on top of that data, we've got to build the right architecture of systems to analyze that data. And we sort of need to take the human out of the loop a little bit, in the sense that, like, we need context to drive how we do analysis. And we saw this come up earlier, just this week in conversations with clients, to say, I can ask an LLM to interpret my data and it can give me an answer. But to have it give me an answer that's filled with the correct context for who I am and how I'm listening, but can also explain to me where I'm creating conflict in other parts of the ecosystem, that's a lot bigger than just putting an LLM on top of a dashboard, right? That's creating a knowledge graph. That's creating a cortex, like a way of these things have to talk and work together and think together and act together. That's very mature level thinking. Yeah, you're creating cognitive patterns, right, with these systems, and it's a whole new way of thinking about what measurement actually is.
That product, angle, right? Of I care about my product KPIs versus the customer KPIs. I mean, that is the heart of this, right? If you want to go out to your board and to the public and say you care about your customers, yet you still have internal KPIs that are, channel related or product related, I guarantee you your execution doesn't align with your what you're saying you want to do, right? And I think that's really the crux of this. If you set your objectives, make sure you have KPIs that actually talk to those objectives. And Ryan, with all the data everywhere, right? And this is why it's important that not everybody just have access to that data, because they will absolutely draw the wrong conclusions. They will lead the business strategy down a path that leads to nowhere. And we all have to come back to, every time we make a strategic decision on how to execute a program, you have to go back to the program objectives, and you have to go back to the KPIs that define that. I don't think it's very well defined yet. I do think the legacy KPIs are fairly hard to let go of, right? It's okay if, I have people tell me this all the time. Greg, I love your idea. It's okay, but we still need, the product KPIs to go up, right? And, is it trust? I think, 10, 15 years ago, it was a leap of faith that loyalty would lead to conversions. Now, I don't think it's a leap of faith. Now we have the data. Our job is to explain it repeatedly, that this works, right? This pattern works that we're talking about here. The pattern of treating people as loyal customers and building up that loyalty, building up that net promoter score, and getting them more active as a valued customer, and treating them that way. And I think that does lead to those product level KPIs. It may not be the product you own, but as an organization, do you really care if they buy product A or B, or that they're engaging with your brand as a whole, right? And I think right now the incentives are so siloed in product line that yeah, they do care. I'd rather them buy my product over Steve's product in this area over here, right? They're still highly competitive, and it's the leader's responsibility to break down that competitive nature, because they're not going to change the fact that people want to compete and win, but they can absolutely change their incentives on things that are forcing them to compete against each other in that way. I think that's one of the paradigm shifts that has to change. It's also a cultural shift that has to change.
Yeah, it sounds like the cultural shift is going to be the hardest shift. It always is. I mean, we can put the answers out there, we can put the examples out there for clients to follow, but getting out of their own way operationally, culturally, tends to be the biggest challenge that we see in the ecosystem today.
Yeah. It's not all gloom and doom though, right? Like let's not leave it there, right? We do great work for our customers, right? Like we're talking about PegaWorld. You're going to hear a lot of them come and say like, hey, because of organizations like Blend and Pega, we figured this out, right? Like we've solved this. And I think that that's the other part of this, right? Like I went to another AI conference and it's all doom and gloom, and it's like no, like this is an opportunity for the thought leaders to actually come in
To step
and
up,
show
right?
exactly, right? Like this, but again, it's not for everybody, right? You can't just give everybody a Formula One car and expect them to win a race, right? Like you need the people who've been there before, right? You've all been there before, and helping people navigate the nuances and the noise and all this technology is so critical, right? Like the ability to help define what data and insights is actually meaningful, how to use that strategically to your advantage, and then turn around and learn exactly what's happened. Like I said, some of the win-loss analysis, it's so critical to understand what you put out in the market and close the loop and bring that back into the funnel again to rebuild the next thing. And I think, that's why, I like this space, right? Like we have people who've done this before, build good results for our customers, and they're very proud to talk about it. And I think PegaWorld's a great example of that. And some of the work that you guys have done too is right in there with that, right? I think that's why we're here today, right? This is fun.
It's a great partnership. It's a really great partnership, and we've been very successful over the last number of years. Guys, let's close this out. We've talked about a lot of great topics, a lot of great points of view. One question I just would like to get both of your perspectives on is, time is moving fast, faster than it's ever moved before in our space, right? If you could give some advice to some of the marketing leaders out there, what should they start doing? What should they stop doing? And what should they continue doing in the next 6 to 12 months?
Look, I'll take a little bit of a myopic view, right? One of the things I think a lot of marketing leaders need to stop doing is reading the next hype email or the next hype thing and then chasing. It's time to just kind of sit down and get a strategy on paper. It's a little bit old school thinking in that sense, but the development of that strategy itself is faster and different and better now with these things that we do. And that's, I think that this is that critical moment, and this is where partnership with experts that are in the field learning in this every single day is so key as an executive leader to understand that's the value that you get when you come work with a partner. I do see a lot of organizations kind of, I think, go all the way back to the beginning of this podcast, the build versus buy. I think that sometimes is the wrong question. In my mind, it's the strategy versus everything else, right? If you're not clear and very clear speaking down, to your teams as to what the most important thing is, it'd be very difficult for your teams to execute this vision and these things that you're trying to do. So I think it's a little bit of a take a breath moment and understand that there are partners out there that can help you accelerate this thing. They can get you to the end game very, very quickly. And then we can start to improve that and we can get better at it. And that's the exciting time. So, that's probably my best answer right now is there's no better time to lean on partners that have the experience and are seeing us at many clients and can come in and help you shape your vision quickly, and reopen that kind of thinking. I think we've lost that over the last few years, trying to in-house everything, right? So again, it's a little bit of a myopic answer for a podcast coming from a services agency, but I do really believe that's the value we provide.
Yeah. Great question, Steve. So I think they need to stop assuming that what they asked for was actually done, right? Like more, there's so many steps along the way where a leader makes a decision, says, this is what I want to get done. And by the time it gets through a Jira board and all of the stuff to market, and they realize that a program isn't actually working the way it's supposed to, they might not know if they don't have visibility into the data. They might not have had the teams build the right reports. You need to have leaders that understand the details, but don't get wrapped around the axle on the details. They need to make informed decisions, but need to know where their execution is failing. Right? I think it's super critical to do that. They absolutely need to lean in, and I'd say that with software too. Right? Oh, I bought this. That's the best in the industry, so we're good. Like I don't think you are. Right? If you don't understand how you're using it and you don't understand the strategic application of that for your customers, you can buy any software product and implement it poorly, right? Like that. And by implement it poorly, I don't mean you connected it to the wrong technology or there's bugs in it or anything like that. I mean, how you use that software is super critical to making sure you're actually executing your business strategy. And I think some leaders are too disconnected from execution to really lead. And the people who are dialed into the execution, when they see a leader talk about something they clearly don't have the visibility into, they lose that, right? So now you have, teams that sort of lose trust in their leadership. And you also have leaders who trust the silos too much. Like, oh, MarTech has that covered, so MarTech's doing this. Well, MarTech is about execution. If they don't get the right orders, they're not going to execute the right thing. And I think that's where you see some disconnects today. You need leadership that works together, that understands they are the ones that have to drive the vision and make sure that vision gets executed, right? So I think the quality check and leaning into that is very critical.
Great. All right, guys. Why don't we wrap this up? Greg, Ryan, thank you both for a great discussion. Greg, safe travels home from Australia. Thinking of you as you travel across the globe. If there's one key takeaway here, it's with SaaS, we're in the midst of an evolution, right? And organizations that win won't be the ones that sit on the sidelines, and the ones that are not moving. They're not the ones that win won't be the ones that are chasing the next tool, right? They're going to be the ones that rethink their operating model. They're going to unlock value from what they have today, embrace what's coming at them from the future. Like you said, Ryan, they're going to partner and they're open to ideas. They're going to make informed decisions. It's an exciting time to be out there. And I think, we're in a great spot as partners from a technology and in an AI perspective, an AI services perspective, to help our clients get to where they need to be. Thanks for listening. Greg, Ryan, thanks again. And to everyone out there, we'll see you on the next podcast.